So my name's Vanessa, and we're going to be talking about stories specifically tonight together. We'll talk a little bit about what a story is and kind of the parts of the stories, and then we will be able to share our own stories. And I hope nice discussions, whether you're sharing a personal story or talking about an object, whatever you decided to do. And we're going to do some practice storytelling before we share our own together so we can try it on. And then hopefully we'll see the relationship between our stories and our voices so that when we're done, we all feel empowered and excited and maybe a little bit more aware of the impact of our voices and our words that we use every day in our life. Okay, so let's just go talk a little bit about history. I mean, we have been telling stories for probably millions of years if we could go back that far and find some history to prove it. But the oldest story that we have found as humans in this time, they say dates back 37,000 years. And it's an Australian Indigenous story about these four giants rather, and one of them went to what is now Australia and sat down and became a huge volcano. So that is like one of the oldest stories that we've been telling ourselves. And the historians are saying that is 37,000 years old. There's another one called the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is about this king who is a poet, and he goes on this amazing journey to learn about himself and have all these big adventures. And it's a long poem. They don't know who wrote it. They think that it was this person named Gilgamesh. And it's a beautiful poem well before we kind of even knew what poetry was. Really? That's a story that's been around for a long time. And then I just curiously wondered when the Bible was written, and because that's a kind of well-known book that I think probably most people in the world at least have heard of the Bible or the Quran or like sacred texts in that way. The Bible was written in 1200 BC, which if I'm doing the math right, anything after BC is like 2021. We're in that right now, right? Am I getting that right?
That seems right.
Add those two together. The Bible is technically 3,200 years old. Wow. No, that sounds like crazy old to me, but I don't know. I don't know if I did the math right, but anyway, the Bible was written quite a long time ago too. And that's just like a whole bunch of stories put together. And then of course the story of Jesus who was here and all the things that he did. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of point out that we as humans who have been communicating with each other for as long as we can remember, we've been doing it for a long time. So it's natural. It's part of who we are to tell stories and to use our voices to tell stories. So I think that's why it feels so good to sit with your friends and sit with your family and talk, because we've been doing it forever and ever. And not just talk, maybe your voice, for whatever reason, if you don't have a physical voice with sound, you can use your hands, you can draw, but certainly we've been communicating with each other for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. I also wanted to point out some artwork too, because I feel like art is another way that we communicate with each other, just to show you just again how long it's been since we've been doing this with each other. And this is another example, which I think is really amazing because you can see the shape of a human hand. This is from a cave in Indonesia that's almost 38,000 years old. Consider that some form of human with hands that look like ours today is like painted on a wall somehow in some sort of color, right? I don't know how they got the red on the cave wall, but they figured that out too. So certainly we have been communicating with each other and telling stories for long time. So yeah, so I feel like we know what we're doing, and it's important to us as humans to connect in this way. Every day when we talk to each other, when we communicate with each other, we're essentially telling stories. There's two different types of stories that we can tell. And the fancy words for those are fiction and nonfiction. Fiction means we make it up. It's not real. We use our imagination. We make up everything about the story. That's what fiction is. And nonfiction means that it's real or based on as much fact, as much reality as possible. The artwork that we looked at would be what's called nonfiction because it's real. Those hands were created by someone factual. Now, the story about how they got there, we're going to have to make that up because we weren't there to know. We can make up a story about how those hands got onto that cave wall. But these are the two basic ways that we can tell stories. So if we have two different kinds of stories, one's fiction, so we make it up, and one's nonfiction, which means it's real and it's based on facts, things that actually happen. The parts that kind of make up those different stories are the people. So if there are people in it, maybe there's animals in it, maybe there's aliens in it. It's sort of the main person or things in the story, that's part of it. There's places is part of the story, it's the location. And the things that were part of the story, all of those are parts of the story. So when you think about telling a story, it includes everything that happens and everyone or everything that is involved in the action, whatever is happening.
They say sometimes no detail is too small.
Exactly. It's very true, especially when you're writing. Yeah, you want to get in there as many details as you can so that your reader or your listener feels like they can relate and feels like they're there with you in the story that you're telling them. Absolutely. Yeah, so we've got people, we've got things, we've got places, and then what happens. Those are the main sort of parts of a story. And many times there is a conflict or a problem that's also a part of a story, especially in fiction, especially in stories that we make up. And that's mostly because for the reader, it makes us want to keep reading and find out what's going to happen based on whatever the problem is. So is the problem going to get solved? Is the character going to be okay? And what choices are going to be made in that story. So today, when we're sharing about ourselves, our personal stories, or our object, we'll be thinking about things like, what the object is, where the object is from, the people who are attached to the object, if somebody gave it to you, if there's any kind of connection to that, and then, what you do with that object, what happens to the object. So all of those things, we can build the story around what your object is, or whatever story that you're telling. It's always going to have these parts of it: people, places, things, and what happens.